Australia, New Zealand, good morning. This is the Brekkie NFL show for week 4, heading into a pretty solid Monday night, or NFC West rivalry, Rams against the 49ers. I'm Phil Murphy on this side of the Pacific. New South Wales' own Laurie Horesh on the other side with a smug grin, still, even though we've done a show since we've done propaganda for week 3, riding high from turning the tables. Also, his Cowboys improved to 3-1. Cooper Rush, the first ever Cowboys QB to win his first 4 starts with a star on the helmet. Laws, I know wins aren't a QB stat, but when you do something for Dallas, not accomplished by Staubach, Aikman, Danny White, Quincy Carter, Dak Prescott, Tony Romo, take your pick. You got to be feeling pretty good. Conversely, my Broncos not riding as high. We have a lot of ground to cover. We have some emotional reactions in this show. Going to talk about teams and where they stand, give our, if pictures are worth 1,000 words, emoji are worth 10,000, so we'll be economical. Some quarterbacks who may be over the hill. We say washed or not. And, of course, we give our tag team championship belts and give you our tips for today's Monday night game. Laz, what have I missed? It is the people's show, so I encourage them to contribute. But now I will tag you in, my partner.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you start right off the bat. It's not a QB wins league, and Cooper Rush, plenty of headlines, but he came out himself and said he's not into QB wins. He put it on the defense, which is always positive. I think it's something that I'd like to see thrown on a few more takes around that quarterback situation in North Texas, which is getting all wild and woolly out there on social media. But I enjoyed this. Was a change-up. We got a big revenge week from the running backs. All this talk about running backs don't matter in 2022. This was a standout week from running back performance, whether you're in a committee or you're a 3-down workhorse. I want you, if you go check out our ticker line down below here, we have our categories, got a good vibes, power rankings, no surprise. The Eagles are at the top there. We've got the quarterbacks we'll talk about in the QB car wash quiz. But really, I've got some running backs down there, the best movie running backs, TV or movie running backs of all time. We've split it up into some tiers. If you've got a hot take on who is the greatest movie or TV running back, send in the comments, whatever platform you're watching on. We'll bring it up on screen as long as it's family friendly. We are an ESPN/Disney program here. But yeah, it was nice to go back into the memory vault and think of some of the great running backs that have graced the fictional screen over the years. But look, let's get right into it off the top. We're going to touch on the emotional reactions. This is one that you conjured up. I'm not sure if this was something that, did your parents, did someone in your family, maybe one of the older generations, they can get a little happy with the emojis at time once they discover the emoji keyboard. It can get a little trigger happy with the emojis in the text. Did this spur it on? What brought up this idea for you?
Well, Laz, we had the doodling segment from a week ago where I drew the state outline of Washington State and the city outline of Washington, D.C., and got some positive reactions. So initially, I thought it'd be fun if you and I were to doodle the emoji, but then that was just too much effort. And you and I will, chat all week. We're both big NFL fans. It's why we started this show a few years ago. We love talking this. We love talking to each other. We'd have a laugh and talk about our teams, chirp a little bit about some other sides. And it's just kind of in that conversation. I noticed, every now and again, we have a little emoji fun, sometimes off color, sometimes maybe not the most, cartoon mouse friendly. Oh, great. Thank you.
Emojis right now.
I have eyes on it. So I thought let's give it a go with the segment. And then it was confirmed when you told me the story of a mate of yours who sent you an emoji of a dab, and it didn't quite come through with something with the iOS. And it was the dab. The dab was described as what, Laz?
It was a elbow cough, very post-COVID or COVID world that we live in now. It was, I know everybody was going, the elbow cough. So you'll never catch me dabbing ever. I think once we had politicians in their 60s and 70s doing it years ago, it was well and truly time to move on. But alas, there are still people holding on to that cultural relic.
So I want to encourage you out there, anybody watching, if you have a story of a team that's best told through emoji, feel free to contribute in the chat. Laurie has eyes on those, and we'll flick a couple through if they're up to snuff. But Laz, I want to start with my Dallas Cowboys emotional reaction. And I knew as a Cowboys supporter, when the team's going well, you don't like to discuss them, but it is a big story in the league. 3 weeks ago, we thought Dak goes down, the season's over. The Philadelphia Eagles became the runaway favorites to win the division, and they still are. I mean, what, $1.30, $1.35 on most markets to win the NFC East. But knocking at the door, maybe some empty calories with the New York Giants, but right there, the Dallas Cowboys with Dak Prescott set to return. And we have the peach, the seat. I don't know if that's Java, it's heat. And we've used that emoji before to talk about hot seat, but this is not the hot seat for Coach McCarthy, as one might have thought with Dak Prescott going down week one, the rumors swirling about Sean Payton. No. This is not a hot seat, Laws. This is the seat being kept warm. Cooper Rush keeping the seat warm for Dak Prescott's return, taking the pressure off of Prescott, because if he's not keen to come back against the Rams is who the Cowboys have next. Is that who's coming up in week 5? The reigning defending Super Bowl champions. If Prescott, for whatever reason, needs to wait another week, you're 3-1, at worst case 3-2. That's better than anybody thought. Rush, as mentioned, 4-0 as a starter, 3-0 this season. No Cowboys quarterback has ever won each of his first 4 starts. But even you go further with the numbers, Rush is throwing for 230, 250, 270 yards per game. I don't think he's thrown an interception this season. Correct me if I'm wrong, or at least in the 3 games he started. I think it's 7 touchdowns, no picks in those 3 games. And in this last game, this win over an overmatched Commanders team, under duress, which didn't happen all that often, and Dallas, again, did a terrific job, no surprise, about pressuring Carson Wentz, and credit to that defensive front for exploiting that weakness in Washington's game. But when Rush was pressured, he was not rushed. 57% completion percentage under duress. That's 10% clear of a league average. 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Keeping the seat very warm for Dak Prescott's return. It's going to be a cushy return, whether Dak is back in week 5 or week 6. Yeah,
I think Dak Prescott's expected to get a check-in with the docs Tuesday your time, Tuesday American time, so Wednesday overnight Australian time. And then Mike McCarthy says he wants to see at least a full week of practice for Prescott before he's back. So I think we can scratch off week 5. That would be stunning. Week 6 against the Eagles. Who knows what there's a world where the Eagles are undefeated and the Cowboys are 4-1. That would involve Cooper Rush out-dueling Matt Stafford and taking on that Rams defense, which is a whole other situation. We're going to see that Rams defense and what they can do against the 49ers a little after 11 o'clock Australian time on ESPN today. I think he's playing complementary football well enough. You're seeing people out there saying, oh, look how he's got CeeDee Lamb going, or look, he throws the deep ball better than Dak. It's not true. The tape doesn't say that. The numbers don't say that. You're grading on a different scale. You can't help what your eyes will tell you certain things based on what you expect. But I agree, your summation there, yes, it is not a hot seat for Mike McCarthy anymore. And credit to him. I slammed him. I've been very critical of him. I thought this season was done when we were looking at 8 weeks out for Prescott. Yes, it's going to be a shorter period of time out, but that team has played a solid brand of football and a far tougher brand of football. Penalties have started to be limited a little bit there, which credit to Mike McCarthy. That's something that he was being heavily criticized for, that hadn't changed over multiple years with him under the helm. And there's a tough-nosed nature to this Cowboys team, which Cowboys fans and Cowboys haters will be completely unified in this in many, many, many high-quality seasons for the Cowboys in recent years. One thing you haven't been able to say is that this was always a tough-nosed football team. There was a little finesse about some of these recent Cowboys outfits in particular, and that's what we saw play out in the playoffs last year against the Niners. That was the word going into the game. How's this Cowboys team going to go up against a defensive front that is just going to beat you up in what the Niners presented, and it played out that way? We're not seeing the same thing this year, so credit where it's due. All right, moving on. My first one.
Quick point to support that. I don't like to do the, hey, I was there type thing, but being at Monday Night Football last week, you see oftentimes when a team is forced into a backup quarterback situation, if you have a Tyrod Taylor or a seasoned, proven backup, a Teddy Bridgewater we saw recently for the Dolphins, a guy who's won in this league, there is a level of confidence and almost a level of elevation of everybody else around saying, hey, if we can give that extra 5 or 10%, we'll be just fine, even though we're down to QB2. Whereas some other teams, perhaps, if there's not that collective trust in the quarterback 2 option, that it just kind of everybody's hanging their head. That Cowboys team is playing with confidence, and it's playing with belief that Cooper Rush is a viable contributor to this team, the undrafted player out of Central Michigan who just got the ball and has now made himself a worthwhile commodity, whether it's Dallas or beyond, to contribute. You have a question there from Toby Wilson?
Yeah, he wants to know if Dallas is too proud to admit Tony Pollard is a better weapon than Ezekiel Elliott. I
My
think
propaganda last week says yes.
Yeah, I
But you
think
probably
there's
didn't
there's an element in the Cowboys front office where they still want to see Zeke featured due to the contract and due to his status within the team. Tony Pollard is clearly more explosive, more consistently game-breaking, and generally, over big stretches has been the more efficient back. You did see Zeke's value. This was not a great running game performance from Dallas, but you do see Zeke's value in a game that they're looking to grind out when he is healthy. Yeah. He still brings that vision and physicality, but yeah, this needs to be a 50-50 time split. I think it's the best thing. It's not just the best thing for the Dallas offense to get Tony Pollard on the field more. It is the best thing for Ezekiel Elliott. He started last season looking really good through 4 weeks, and then that toll hits again. Lean on him, and the injury comes, and then we see Credit, gutting it out through a PCL injury, but still it completely falls off in terms of being an effective use of the ball when on offense. And yeah, Toby's got a follow up here. Is Cooper Rush the best Dallas quarterback since Aikman? No, and quite frankly, I think when we take a look back at Dak Prescott's time, I think Dak, given another however many years of his prime, I think he's got every shot to not just go past the likes of Tony Romo's achievements, but in terms of pure quarterback play, I think he could be circling past Troy Aikman, who you measure stats via the generation. You can't measure them, paper to paper, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, 2020s. You have to take in context. But when you're looking at the production there, I mean, Dak's been putting up numbers and has had no deep playoff success, but has got himself to the playoffs a few times. I think 10 years' time, I think it's a very different question, very different discussion about the pantheon, the Mount Rushmore, if you will, of Dallas Cowboys quarterbacks and where Dak sits on that. And one more, we got a Trevor Lawrence one, but we'll touch on that later. Let's go to my first one of the day, my first emotional reaction. The Atlanta Falcons. Phil, this is one that I'm sure jumps close to you. Never skip leg day. This is not a performance for the quarterback. This is not one where they were going to turn to Marcus Mariota and say, light him up with your arm, kid. This was running, just turn around, hand it off. Now, they're going to need to not skip leg day with Cordarrelle Patterson hitting IR with a knee injury. He'll be out at least 4 weeks with that. But now we turn to Caleb Huntley stepped in and Tyler Algier, very trendy late-round rookie fantasy draft pick for all you fantasy players out there. If he has been dropped, if he is sitting on the waiver wire, that'll be a feisty Wednesday afternoon Australian time as you jump on, get your bids in. Hopefully you're doing fab budget in your fantasy leagues and not doing some ridiculous waiver order. Anyway, regardless, the Falcons just turned on the run game and said, look, this is a depleted Cleveland Browns front. A very shocking story involving Myles Garrett last week, and they're missing numbers in that run defense and what they can expect to face up there. So fine. Look, Arthur Smith is not working with a world-beating roster there. They have some spot talent, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. Wasn't the day to utilize those guys. Let's get nasty. Let's get these blockers getting, forget just north-south and the running backs. Let's get the offensive line moving north-south, get them moving downfield, control the line of scrimmage, and let's also take a little of the air out of the ball, take a little time off the clock here, and credit to them. They get big victory. And look, this is a Falcons team that they've risen to number 6 on the Good Vibes power rankings because despite the status of their roster, they are 2-2, and they've had some narrow results. Their record could actually be better, and their wins are aging quite nicely. So that's number 2 for me. Phil, emoji time. Who are we going to next?
Well, I when you said don't skip leg day, I thought we were going to get like a Young Hui Koo shout out, which would be deserved. Fair. He's 5 for 5 in the last 2 weeks, and margins are small. Getting wins is killing it in fantasy if you need somebody because they stink in the red zone. And you mentioned Marcus Mariota, 7 completions, 7 in a win. It's the fewest for any Falcons team in 21 years. So that's where I thought we were going with never skip leg day, but I guess it works on both sides.
It's been their losses. They're 2-2. Their losses are by a total tally of 5 points. They're 6 points from being 4-0. So let's leave that there. Phil, emoji time. We're getting some emotion with this next one. Take us where you want to go.
Yeah, this is very emotional. I had a different one chosen, and then the news came out today that Javonte Williams has suffered not just an ACL tear, but an LCL tear, another ligament in there that's gone. And Shame, terrific, exciting running back to watch. A bruising running back out of North Carolina suffers a lower body injury that, if it were just the ACL, would sideline him for the year. From my understanding, I'm not Dr. Phil, but from my understanding, it's an injury that these added elements aren't going to elongate the timetable materially, but it does compound the risk of re-injury, which is a shame for such a young, talented running back and somebody against whom, as you tackle, you go low. So the Broncos coming off a disheartening loss to the Raiders, a game to be had, and just league wide. I mean, it's why this league is so difficult to prognosticate, and it gives us so much to talk about. Every game but one yesterday, at some point in the fourth quarter, was a one-score game. The only one that wasn't was the marquee headliner, Chiefs-Bucks. It never got closer than 10 points in the fourth quarter. Every other game was a one-score game late. So you have these margins so small, and now Denver offense struggling, finally showing some signs of life, finally showing some ability for Russell Wilson to do something downfield. He was 6 for 10 passing on routes over 10 air yards, 185 yards. He had a nice deep ball to KJ Hamler, had a touchdown. Now Denver loses its running back. So we have Javante's hurt. Russ isn't going to be able to cook without him. And then the calendar, we may as well flip it to 2023. I am selling my Broncos wild card stock. This team is not going to get to 9 or 10 wins. I fear their ceiling is 7 or 8, which will be just that channel of mediocrity in which they have found themselves since the Super Bowl. It could be worse. You could be, a league-wide punchline, but also when you're in that middle road, you can't get that elite, top-tier quarterback talent, the Herbert, the Burrow type that. If you are constantly picking in the low teens, and now Denver doesn't even have that option because they've traded away a bevy of draft picks over the next few years, marquee picks, to bring in Russell Wilson at $250 million US. So multiply that times 1.4 to get your translation. And now, because the running back now, the duty falls on Melvin Gordon, who may as well be running with a giant bar of wet soap. He's got 4 fumbles this season. Laz, going back his last 44 carries, which goes into last year, his last 44 carries, he's fumbled 5 times. 5 times in 44 carries. In the last 12 games, he has 3 fumbles that went the other way for a touchdown, including the one that ultimately was the biggest play of this game by a significant margin. Amik Robertson for the Raiders taking it back 68 yards. And God bless Garrett Bowles, if you haven't seen the play. I mean, he did the Madden Square desperation dive from like 10 yards out, just like, I'm close enough, turbo, I'm not going to catch him. Dive, which is brilliant to see in real time. But the guy also ran 60 yards when nobody else did. And it was an effort play that just in case Robertson was forced to cut back, he was perhaps there. So great effort play from him. But now Denver looking in their backfield, they could have much afforded another serious receiver injury, not wishing that on anybody by any means, but they've lost Cortland Sutton to injury. Jerry Jeudy was up and down last year. They lost KJ Hamler last year to injury. And Tim Patrick not there this year because he's the sure-handed receiver done for the year. They're able, because of the depth of the receiving core, to work around that. The same depth doesn't exist in the backfield with Melvin Gordon. So I think it's time to flip the calendar in Denver and temper expectations for this year.
I will encourage, again, if you've got emotional reactions, we'll call it, to your team's performance or any performance you saw out there. Maybe it's your fantasy team's performance. Fire them through in the comments there. We'll bring them up on screen. I've got one more to go here, but before we've got the TFL podcast, wanted to say we've used waiver priority since 1994 in response to me saying I hope you're using Fab out there to go get Tyler Algier and others this week. Yes, well, never, we're all constantly learning in this world, never too old to change and develop and grow and become better. My last one, before we get one of the questions we've been sent in, as I swing back around, this involves the Cincinnati Bengals, not in action over the weekend. This was a very controversial and a very much talked about Thursday Night Football performance, Friday Australian time. They get the victory over the Dolphins. The story there wasn't the victory. It was the Tua Tagovailoa development there. My question here: who's the number 1 wide receiver in Cincinnati, Phil? Because 3 out of 4 games, it's gone the way of T. Higgins over Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is a phenomenal talent. You know what? So is T. Higgins.
Yeah.
I've got a love for the big body gotties. Mike Williams coming back to the fore this week, going for $120 for the Chargers. He inspired that nickname last season 2 of our show together. I love a big body gotty. And T. Higgins fills that with the big, long, tall frame, the way he gets, when he's working on the outside, gets a step and then gets to high stepping. Who doesn't like high stepping on a football field? Extends those knees high. I got a bet in PE. I don't know what you call it here. We call it PE class. Is it called the same?
Yeah, PE class. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I bet you in PE, when you did warm-ups and you had to, you're doing the running up and down the basketball court and you've got to like kick your own butt with your heels. Mm-hmm. Like that's how you're extending.
Don't know where you're going here, but yes, I'm
T. Higgins would have been elite at it. The way that he gets those legs up and down, the flexion there, no doubt that he was phenomenal at that. I think this is a great problem for the Bengals who've righted the ship. They snuck in despite starting the season awfully. They've righted the ship back to 2-2 in an AFC North that is no one's really jumped out and grabbed it by the scruff of the neck as Pittsburgh deal with their new rookie quarterback taking the helm, and that's the expectation we presuming we see going forward. That's the vibes coming out. It's going to be Kenny Pickett. As that division sorts itself out, the Bengals have leveled it back at 2-2. They got a great matchup coming up this week against the Bengals, against the Ravens, I believe. And then the schedule really opens up with some of their opposition. They're going to have a quarterback advantage in a lot of contests coming up. This is a good problem. Healthy T. Higgins is a good problem. I just think we need to start talking about this is far closer to 1A and 1B. And if Higgins keeps performing it the way he is, he may very well be that 1A. I know Jamar Chase's pedigree and the draft stock and where you come into the league matters so much in how we have discussions about things. See Dak Prescott debate. But I think it's a real conversation. 3 out of 4 weeks, and he's doing it in style. Am I completely off my rocker here, Phil? Am I overreacting?
I don't think you are, as long as you're saying what I think you're saying. And it's not Jamar Chase is not who we thought he was. It's that T. Higgins is, as the kids say, he is him. He is also him.
I'm so glad you're the first person to use that phrase on here. I was determined not to.
Okay, well, now the ice is broken. I feel like I'm usually, when we go to house parties, I'm the first person to dip into the hummus or salsa or whatever. They put it out. Nobody wants to be that guy.
What do you dip? I'm not trying to get objectifying here, but we know that health and fitness is a big part of your world. Are you dipping crackers, or is it capsicum, or you call it peppers? Is it celery, cucumber? What are we dipping into the hummus?
I am indiscriminate. Crackers of all sorts. Do like my veg, some cauliflower, perhaps some carrots. But yeah, I spread it around. I'm not cutting weight. I'm not like I'm gonna be on the stage for Mr. Olympia. Jeez, dude. But yeah,
it's hummus chat here on the Brekkie NFL show. So if you've got hummus takes, send them in. If you've got favorite hummus, send it in.
Garlic, red pepper.
Throughout my life know that me circling an NFL show back to hummus is one of the more predictable things that was going to happen this season.
Yeah, that paid about $1.50 on Bet365. So Laz, what we're saying is, I think a perfect example is look at Miami. Like if we're going to look at the receivers in a vacuum, Tyreek Hill, superior talent to Jalen Waddle. That's saying nothing about Jalen Waddle, but it's also saying that whether when Tua comes back or Teddy Bridgewater, if you told me that the next 3 games Jalen Waddle will have more receiving yards than Tyreek Hill, it's not going to surprise me. It's also not going to concern me about Tyreek Hill's form because of the caliber of receiver that Jalen Waddle has proven to be. Same thing with T. Higgins. He and Joe Burrow establishing a measure of rapport and reliability, and teams are going to key in on Jamar Chase, and that pendulum will swing back the other way as T. Higgins continues to put up great performances. And then you have Tyler Boyd over the middle and Joe Mixon if you want to dump it down. It's why this team went to the Super Bowl a year ago.
And Hayden Hurst proving himself a really nice addition.
Yeah, so I think who was the number 1 receiver on the Bengals is Jamar Chase not who we thought he was. It's that they have a litany of receiving options, and in an AFC North where the margins are going to be small and the Ravens don't seem keen on holding on to any 3-touchdown lead twice in the last 2 weeks. They've lost their last 5 home games. I didn't realize that, and in every one of them they held a second half lead at some point.
Yeah,
that is astonishing.
But Phil, you're burying the lead. How many preseason games have they won in a row, though?
A lot of them, and I made a lot of money betting on them in the preseason. Them and the old school Norv Turner Washington football team under the previous name. They were Steve Spurrier was the one. Actually, I take that back. Steve Spurrier's old Washington football team. You could take that to the bank. I wasn't betting on them because I was like 13, but you know what I mean.
I know. Right.
But yeah, so I think it's good. Who's the number one receiver in Cincinnati? I still tip the Ravens to win that division. I've been on that from the jump. I still think over 60 minutes of football, they're the best team that's out there. But it wouldn't surprise me if the Ravens up late made a head-scratching decision and threw that game away, and Joey B and his cool cats and kittens found a way.
And I think, look, I think this is a good problem. I say this is a good problem. Let me just expand on that for a second. I think this solves some of the stress that you feel at times watching the Bengals, which is Jamar Chase gets locked down. It limits where you can go. Jamar Chase played against Trayvon Diggs against the Cowboys and had a tough day of it. Not the only one. How are your ratings on Trayvon Diggs now? But this will change up some of the assignments. This will make it won't be as static as, right, Chase gets number one attention. Chase gets number one attention. It allows you to move things around. It allows you to take advantage of matchups and ultimately free things up for a Bengals offense that felt super constrained and super, super stressed early in the season. We talked about the offensive line. All right. I think that gets us all the way out. We've got a couple of fan questions. So let's just pause here before we get into our QB rapid fire. We've got a couple of fan questions. Jake off the top wanted to know, legends, thank you. Is Trevor Lawrence still a top 6 quarterback after his inaccurate showing against the Eagles? This was obviously my an island I'm willing to go to. This was my lesson that I'd learned last week.
Yeah.
Yes, he was still end up on that trajectory. This was a game, the Eagles versus Jaguars. Eagles had a far better game plan for this, right? They limited mistakes. They took the air out of the ball. This was a heavy Miles Sanders day. They did not put it on Jalen Hurts. It didn't have an explosive day. Didn't have a passing touchdown. They kept this thing on the ground in really awful, windy, wet, wild, sloppy football conditions there. And not the good type of sloppy football like the Mud Bowl in Friday Night Lights, like the bad kind of sloppy where it's just fumbles galore. Look, Trevor Lawrence wasn't exposed to a whole lot of wet weather play during his college time. Being in Jacksonville, you're going to get a lot of good weather. I don't know, build a dome for the guy for all I care. I mean, he is going to be a franchise quarterback. Build a dome so he doesn't have to deal with it.
He doesn't need one as badly as Josh Allen needs one.
If it's not his thing, build him a dome. Anyway, this is an aberration game. And look, they were still close within this. They had the ball back. The game was within one position when, what happens? Another fumble. Sometimes you need to look at a performance and say, right, let's peel down to some conditions here. Look, the interception he threw was not the worst interception you're ever going to see. Hell of a play from Bradbury on the back end there for the Eagles secondary. James Bradbury showing a veteran savvy and now there to pick that one off. So yeah, I'm not taking a step back, and I might be giving away far too much here, but if you're struggling for quarterback in your fantasy league, a great buy low option. If you had someone go down with injury, maybe you drafted Trey Lance, maybe you invested heavily in Fab into a Tagovailoa, maybe you invested in Russell Wilson and the production isn't there. I think Trevor Lawrence is a great buy low candidate. Yeah. I'm not budging off my top 6 line there.
Well, and look at the next 5 games for the Jags: Texans, Colts, Giants, Broncos in London, and the Raiders. So there's opportunity for him to rebound. I think I agree, Laws. I think this is a very different conversation in 5 weeks' time. And I think the Jags were up 14-0 in that game, and Jalen Hurts found a way into the end zone on 4th and goal. If the defense makes that stop, this is, I think, a different conversation. And I think it's the Jags found a way. The fumbles lost, rookie mistake, not protecting the ball as well in wet conditions. That's something from which he'll learn. The arm talent remains. We got a question from the B League says fantasy football. After this week's incredible effort, is Saquon Barkley already a better quarterback than Taysom Hill? My question is, Daniel Jones a better red zone option than Saquon Barkley? That's my question.
Even with the ankle sprain, maybe so. I mean, he's the one who gets the carries.
He's averaging 50 rush yards a game is Daniel Jones. Sneaky athletic, as he's called. He looks like the Madden default creative player, but that guy can scoot. He's a good
athlete without being a good runner of the football, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
He is a better physical mover when we're talking about like physiological biometrics. Did you like that? Then he is actually like showing the nous and the savvy and the control and vision as a ball runner. But look, Saquon, cue the rat-a-tat music. Where's Wildcat? Get the remixes going. It's great to see Saquon under center. Maybe go to it more often. And you know what? If I had to play a game where I got to a full week to game plan Taysom Hill as my quarterback, my pseudo wildcat quarterback, or Saquon Barkley. If honors are even, offensive line, weaponry, all that kind of stuff, skill position is even, I'm taking Saquon Barkley. I've got more faith that he's going to break one out. Here we go. The B League says Vanilla Vic.
Love it.
Because he's known. Thank you very, very much for that. Look, we are loving the fan questions that we're getting in live every morning, Tuesday, Australian time. This has been so much fun so far this season. So please send them in and we will continue to surface them. Phil, let's get on to our second segment. We've hit the half-hour mark and we're on to segment 2. So this is going to be rapid fire. Yes. Okay. Welcome to the car wash. We're going through a veteran quarterback car wash. Your quarterback, is he washed? Still got it? Or just he is who he is? And we can't blame him for that. And we can't blame ourselves. We can only blame ourselves for expecting otherwise. Let's start right from the top here. First name, and you can see this down below. You can see this. We've got this running on the ticker if you're following along or joining partway through.
After we get past Tim Riggins and Al Bundy on our fantasy.
Let's start with your man, Russell Wilson. Phil, has he still got it? Is he washed? Or this is who he is?
Yeah, I mean, he had a reputation of being, in his later years in Seattle, of being a high completion above expectation guy, but a low EPA per play guy, like a lot of conservatism. Let Russ cook. His metrics, like QBR, take it for what it's worth. His QB rating are bad, but I think he is who he is. He still. It's so frustrating to watch when they play the type of game they did against San Francisco, where on 2 drives when they need to move the ball vertically, they try and they do. And then the rest of the game, it's these route trees out of the mid-90s versus the offensive guru who came in as Nathaniel Hackett. Look, Russell Wilson had a terrific career in Seattle. His best days are behind him. He will win some games for Denver. I mean, their 2 wins were both fourth quarter comebacks and had game-winning drives attached to them. I wish it were happening earlier. I'm concerned about the Javonte Williams injury, what that's going to do. But yeah, Russ is who he is.
Yeah, I'll keep this one short. I think largely he is who he is, but there is an element of his game that's washed, and that's what makes you feel like he's washed. That's his legs. He is no longer the mover, and it's not just running for pure yardage and first downs. It's that mobility. It's that willingness to create in the pocket. And to a degree, he had to at times because he does have physical limitations, not with his arm. His arm, he's always had a cannon, but with his height and how you see the reasons that, that short to intermediate part in the middle of the field is a struggle for him is because of his height, because he is sub 6 foot, and because the reality of having 6'5" offensive linemen in front of you, not to mention the defensive line, but his ability to create within that pocket to open up alleys through which he can see. It has changed. So look, he steps
into sacks. I mean, he does. He's not worth $240 million.
If his arm was the problem. No. If his arm was falling off, you'd talk about him being washed, but really it's just his legs have really changed just how dynamic a game breaker he is. All right, next one. Let's go. We're working our way down the rundown. Next one, Matt Ryan. Phil, the Colts and Titans, who feel like they play every single week. This one goes the way of the Titans, but Matt Ryan, the more productive quarterback, again over 300 yards, but there are some turnovers in there.
Lots of them.
Is he washed? Is he is who he is? I feel pretty confident saying he doesn't still have it.
Yeah, I agree. He's washed. 2 fumbles lost against Tennessee. 9 fumbles this season through 4 games. 3 of them lost. He was sacked 5 times in that game. He's had 5 picks this year. He was sacked 15 times this year. In the 3-horse mess of a race that is the AFC South, I do think the Colts will ultimately finish a step below the Jags and the Titans. And I think Ryan's diminished play is a reason why I think he's washed.
Yeah, I think this is a big fan of Matt Ryan. He's never had the absolute strongest arm, but love those prime Falcons years. His deep ball was one of the most enjoyable things to watch. The way he set that thing sail with a prime Julio Jones racing under it. And there were some other speedy, wide receiver 3-4 types that they did surround him with back then. But yeah, I think one thing that stood out to me, and we can touch on Ryan Tannehill next, the difference in velocity between those two, Ryan versus Ryan, was really stark to just see play out in that game. Matt Ryan's still a smart quarterback, but never the most mobile. So then we're going to start talking about pocket mobility and how that can age despite being a savvy quarterback who's seen all sorts of coverages over the years. And just seeing some of the balls getting out to the sideline, you could tell like the DBs just had that extra split second, extra half second to get there and disrupt. So yeah, sadly, I don't think this is going to be. I think they had an idea that we could get Phil Rivers 2.0 with a really strong veteran presence that keeps the culture going in the right way. But I just don't think the play's there at this point. Despite the fact that he's had some games over 300 yards, that's not what you're wishing for your quarterback. And the fact that on the other side of the ball, while Jonathan Taylor goes down with an injury, we'll see if he misses time. Derrick Henry, welcome to going over 4.2 yards a carry for the first time this season. The fact that the Titans got that side of things going really set the table for a different type of day. Ryan Tannehill, let's go on him. Washed, still got it. He is who he is. He goes, 17 for 21, couple of touchdown passes. Classic, let's not throw it a lot, but when we do, let's be efficient. Where does he fall on this radar for you, Phil?
Yeah, I think he is who he is because they lose A.J. Brown. They're making the most of a receiving core that has had some injury. Treylon Burks replacement. Yeah, so it is a favorable stretch of schedule coming up for the Titans. I do think they'll compile some wins over Washington. They have the Colts again. You said it feels like they play every week. They play again in 3 weeks. And who knows, they'll probably play 3 or 4 more times this season. Then they get the Texans. So in the next 4 weeks, bye is the biggest intimidator for me on their schedule. I do think Tannehill is who he is. I don't think he's the play action threat is what it was when Derrick Henry was rushing for 2,000 yards, especially when in last year when he had A.J. Brown to target. So it's serviceable, but I don't think he's going to elevate them and be a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback over 17 weeks. So have Pro Bowl moments, but I don't see him as a top 5 QB in the AFC by any means.
No, he is that kind of for me, he is that prime meridian in the middle of the NFL. Shout out to the late great legend Chris Wessling, who came up with the Dalton scale and that.
Couldn't go international Dateline just because of the nature of this show.
It's morphed over the years, but Ryan Tannehill is that guy these days. And look, if they're putting him in position to only throw the ball 20 times, complete 80+% of them, and the run game's going, I think, yes, he is who he is. And in a bad AFC South, that is who they need him to be as well. We'll say Robert Woods going to need to step up. The production's picked up the last 2 weeks. If that run game's going, because Woods is such a great run blocker as a wide receiver, such a willing run blocker as a wide receiver, and because you can line him inside and out, if he's going to be their prime guy, if that running game is going, I actually think that works really well because it disguises what you can do and how you line up Robert Woods with what his task is if he's going to be that first read on passing downs and Derrick Henry's out there. Okay. Next one here as we work our way down. Big name. Goes down in a higher scoring affair than I thought. Kansas City Chiefs against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Everybody
there were some struggles early on in this one. Tom Brady, Phil. Is he washed? Does he still have it? He is who he is at 45 years old.
Well, that's the thing. At 45, I think he is who he is. I didn't expect Tom Brady to be throwing for 5,000 yards this season. What we're getting is his last year in New England, where he went 24 touchdowns, 8 picks for a team that started 8-0 behind a terrific defense, and then as it started to get cold and nasty, some teams started to figure him out, and they lost to the Titans in the first round of the playoffs, in the wild card round after a 12-4 finish. I think it's a similar thing. And oddly enough, you look at like some of the defensive metrics, somehow this defense for the Bucs is statistically better than that awesome defense. And the offense is a little bit worse. Now, I will say that a lot of that had to do the absence of a lot of receiving options. You saw the great game Mike Evans had coming back from suspension. Chris Godwin now back in the fold. Some of his options, Russell Gage even back in the mix. I'm forgetting somebody, but they have the full allotment or near the full allotment of receiving options. So I do think the offense will take an uptick. I do think this team will get to an 11 or 12 win total, especially on a 17-game calendar. I don't think this team is poised in position for a deep playoff run because they ran for 3 yards against the Chiefs. I know they were down. They gave up 28 points in the first half, but painfully one-dimensional at moments. And I think at 45, he is who he is. He's a hell of a lot better than I'm going to be at 45. But I think it's going to be that kind of, high 20s touchdown, high single-digit interception, good enough, savvy veteran leadership. But I don't think he needs to make spaces for rings on any other fingers by any means.
I agree with what you're saying there, and I just want to take this point to take the time to make the point that, like we've seen and like we've discussed, talk about two teams that played each other, the Eagles and the Jags, how surroundings around a quarterback make a difference for a young quarterback, with how we've seen Jalen Hurts put in position to succeed, and this week in the monsoon notwithstanding, how Trevor Lawrence has been put in position to succeed this year versus last year. This is an example of how we need to stop with the quarterbacks have to elevate every single element around them. We're talking about guys like Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, who for many people is number one. We're talking about 1 and 2 in the history of NFL quarterbacks, being hampered by what's around them. You do need to surround your quarterbacks with success. We pay you $40 million a year or whatever it is, therefore $45, $50 million a year, therefore make everything work. That is a ridiculous tactic that is a conversational note that needs to be thrown out in a war room, but with no cameras on. That can't be a legitimate public philosophy for a football franchise and an organization to be running. You need to surround people with talent. Doesn't matter how good, how old, how young you are. This is how you take advantage of investing in a quarterback. And we're seeing that play out. Brady isn't going to make a Russell Gage, Cole Beasley offense a top 5 unit, but he is still at 45, still a productive version of Tom Brady. And as those weapons come back, and maybe Julio Jones was the name you were thinking of there, that'll make his way back in the fold.
Yeah, he had a quiet day in that game as well,
yes.
But still, just that option and that presence.
But yeah, I think he is who he is. I don't think he still has absolutely everything he always did. But there will be better days. And, I think Kansas City Chiefs defense, particularly in that first half, I think they're an ascending unit. So like what they did there, okay, this one should be quick. Carson Wentz, Phil, still got it washed, or he is who he is. Yeah.
We're watching.
Yeah,
13 completions. I mean, even the completions he had, 13 of them at or behind the line of scrimmage. Yeah. He was pressured 16 times. Some of that is a porous offensive line. Some of that is good defensive pressure from Dallas. Some of it is him holding onto the ball too long, which has been a problem of his even at his peak in 2017 with the Eagles. 2.4 air yards per completion. I mean, just long handoffs is all he had. Unfortunately for the Commanders, they rolled the dice, hoping that they would get the 2021, 27 touchdown, 7 pick version of Wentz that we saw in Indianapolis. Not great, not a world beater.
Which wasn't the whole story, but yeah.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying? Like somebody who could manage. They're getting the 2020 Eagles final season version of Wentz, which is a step down from that.
They weren't even trying to capture lightning in a bottle with Wentz. They were trying to just capture like maybe a half a bottle of relatively cold orange Gatorade. Like that's all they were hoping for. And I don't think
you put your hand in the cooler and all the drinks you want are gone, and you just kind of sift around and what is edible in here? And that's what they got.
Exactly. So yeah, I think the reason he's washed is because he is lesser than he used to be. You can say, these mistakes and
at
these
29
in-game decision. The poor in-game decision making, how he processes in the pocket there. When he chooses to get uber aggressive, that has always been largely who he is. But when you take away his limited mobility compared to the athlete he comes into the league, and the mental scarring that he's had on the field over the years, I think sadly if you're a big Wentz fan, this is the end of the road as a franchise starting quarterback. He'll still be in the league, but I don't see how another franchise can look at this and go, this is going to be our guy.
Yeah, and for Washington, if they're drafting in the top 5, I mean, there are quarterback options in this class, whether it's Will Levis from Kentucky or Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud. I mean, that's where Washington is going in the first round.
All right, we've got one. We've got a few comments here from audience, and I'll bring one of those up in just a sec from the viewers. But our last one before we get out of our QB car wash quiz. Aaron Rodgers, the Green Bay Packers need overtime and need a couple of possessions in overtime to take care of the Bailey Zappi-led New England Patriots. Where is Aaron Rodgers at? Is he? He's not washed.
No.
Does he still have it all, or is he kind of who he is at this point? Where do you land in that? Having seen what the Packers have put up relatively unconvincingly, even though they are sitting there with a shiny 3-1 record through 4 weeks. Where do you sit on the Aaron Rodgers scale at the moment?
Laws, it seems a lot like last year where they had an inexplicable loss in week 1 and then found their form. It wasn't when Brian Hoyer went down, the market on that game, the line jumped immediately to Packers by 12.5. I think at the moment it was like 4.5. It was a violent swing. The expectation was Green Bay would drop it a gear and go. We're still seeing something you touched on before, the absence of Devontae Adams being felt. Through 3 weeks, Rodgers was averaging just over 5 air yards per attempt, the lowest of his career, the lowest in the league. In this game, it was 9. He was going far more vertically, showing moments of trusting Christian Watson over the top, finding moments of trusting Romeo Doubs. I mentioned on SportsCenter today, Doubs caught it, question mark. I had flashbacks to that moment. He brought it in. It's on Lambeau Field. I'm sorry. It's too soon. I know it's always too soon.
As Tony Romo, of course, was on the call there. Yes. They're in Lambeau. As Romo said, as succinctly as you want, here's the difference. Dez extended and actually made a football play. Romeo Doubs never did.
You can tell how easy it is to poke the bear.
Yeah, and I don't even have my Dez caught it mug here today. Like, Dobbs, we're in the office studio.
I can make you a Dobbs caught it mug as well, so you have that for home and the road. But Aaron Rodgers over the last 4 years, I'll bring it back. 4 years, 136 touchdown passes. That's 34 per year. He has 15 total picks in that time. That's the last 4 years. I'm seeing in Aaron Rodgers as he starts to trust a very young receiving core who, if you look at their top 6 wide receivers on the depth chart, 4 of them are first or second year players, and only one is a pick from the top 3 rounds of a draft. So he has a young, raw receiving core, but Romeo Doubs is showing some promise. And some of these guys are starting to come along. And yeah, he's going to yell at them in the film room, but they're a young squad. I still think Aaron Rodgers has got it. The question is, are the weapons around him enough? And as you made the point, and I agree with it, that is not quarterback talent is not an absolute. At some point, talent around you absolutely matters. And that's my biggest question about Green Bay is how quickly do the puppies come into form and become big dogs? Because come January, the Christian Watson drops can't happen. The Romeo Doubs not holding onto the ball through the catch, that can't happen. Or this team will not ascend to the NFC, which if they do, they have the potential to beat any team on any given day.
It looks tough, particularly in that this offense takes some time to get going. The first off, it looked tough. It looked hard. It wasn't pretty football. And I think you look at who you mentioned, trust. Big spots in this game, in congested parts of the field, in more dangerous throws. The numbers that kept coming up, 13 and 18. Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb.
That's okay.
Familiarity and trust, and that's okay. Romeo Doubs getting featured in some spots late in some high leverage situations. Some he took advantage of, one big one that he didn't. Ultimately doesn't cost them the game. Just have a think of the throws, though. The touchdown pass, that is a picture-perfect back shoulder throw to a big body. That is touchdown or incompletion. That is not a throw that's getting picked off in that situation. And the one over the top there, his man had a step. He put it out in front of him. Again, it's an aggressive throw, but it's not a risky throw at that point. There was a 3rd down conversion late in that game when they're in overtime, when they're looking to move downfield, get to field goal range. Again, it is a 3 yard. It's short 3 yards to go to get the fresh set of downs. It's outside. It's to his hands only. Again, not a risky situation. We will see that grow. We will see that chemistry and confidence improve over the season. I think he still does have it. I don't think his decision making has been amazing so far this season, but this is all symptomatic of the same thing. I think in 4, 5, 6 weeks' time, this is a very different looking, more cohesive unit. And when it comes to and look, maybe this was always where we were going to be 4 weeks in when, what was it, Rodgers' first throw of the season was a would-be 80-yard touchdown to Christian Watson that went right through the breadbasket. Maybe that set the tone right from the top. Okay. Yep, we've got some interesting comments there that I'm going to steer clear of. That gets us through our QB car wash. But I do have one here from Steve Hitster, a notorious internet sporting commenter on the social medias. Have the Bears blown their tank here by winning 2 games? They seem to have worked it out now. No passing, no touchdowns. No, they haven't blown this. Nope. I think when you look at the bottom of the league, at the worst teams, who are we thinking of, Phil? We're thinking, the Texans.
Houston, Chicago.
We're thinking of Chicago. Teams like the Lions are going to win more than, they're going to be far too competitive to sink down there. The Bears, what they are showing, their ability to not capture and not take advantage of the few bright spots of talent they have on offense puts them in this situation. This is not a dominant Bears defense of old. So no, I don't think they've blown their chance. If you are holding out hope of landing that number 1 overall pick, I sincerely hope that they don't move on from Justin Fields despite some of the quarterbacks that will be available, but holding that pick ransom and getting an absolute haul to truly inject some talent into this roster, I still think that is well and truly alive. Steve, you do not need to abandon hopes of the tank for number 1 and the treasure trove of picks that could be awaiting you. You don't have to abandon hope yet.
Yeah, I'm not worried yet. Washington at home is a threatening game toward the number 1 pick. Very winnable game for the Bears, but I don't think the Lions are a good matchup for them. As you mentioned, it's a very winnable game. The Lions lead the league in points and lead the league in points allowed. I mean, that may be the time we see the Bears get to 27, 28 points this season, but then they're also going to give up 45 both times on both ends, whether they're indoors in Detroit or outdoors at Soldier Field. So
especially if
I'm sitting on a ticket loss under 5.5 wins for the Bears. Yeah. I am not sweating it at all.
I'll buy that ticket off you.
Yeah, I still think 4 wins is a ceiling for this team. I don't think they're beating the Jets from what we saw with them and Zach Wilson, especially once they get a couple more weeks into it. So all the games that you circled us, the Bears have a manageable schedule. That offense is so anemic. I don't. The Giants was actually one I thought they could win because they could maybe keep it close, which they did, and then Velus Jones muffs a punt, and it's all downhill from there.
All right, look, the Bears are a team. We saw a little life from Darnell Mooney. The connection was there with Justin Fields, or at least it showed some sparks for the first time. That is a tag team that I know a lot of Bears fans, maybe not. Steve Hitstory doesn't want it to happen this year, but in the future, they will hope that is a tag team that proves more fruitful and perhaps earn some gold. That is a perfect segue into our NFL Tag Team Champions of the World. That means the belt is out. Phil, where are we heading? Who is taking the belt in week 4? Who has earned the honors as the dominant, the best tag team in the NFL for this week?
Well, Laz, sometimes in booking, you have to get lucky. You have to get a little fortunate. And in our top segment, our emotional reaction, and if you're joining us late, go back and check it out. We recapped the NFL week 4 and some team statuses using emoji where words failed us. I had the Chiefs in there originally, but we had an issue with a magic wand not showing up on the emoji, and then my emoji was a rabbit and a top hat, and just didn't really work. We couldn't figure it out. So the booking worked as we looked at the terrifying tag team that was Patrick Mahomes and offensive coordinator Eric sleeping with Bieniemy in the first half of that featured game Sunday night here stateside, Monday morning on ESPN in Australia and New Zealand. 28 points in the first half. We have Patrick Mahomes, not inter-league play, inter-sport play, inter-code play, spin move. He may as well have dribbled that ball between his legs and a jump shot pass to the back of the end zone. In a game that Mahomes, again, looked like Mahomes. Travis Kelce had, 5 catches in the first quarter. The Chiefs rushed for season high, 189 yards as a team with a season high in carries. They are your tag team champions of the world with, Laws, as we've discussed, a little bit of tension that seems to be synergistic, making the total greater than the sum of the parts, where he and Eric Bieniemy get their hand raised by some, overmatched official who just, let some team manager get on the apron and distract things. But there's that little bit of scowl tension between the two, and then they can put it to bed to defend their belt. They are our tag team champions of the world of the week.
All right, if you've got a different tag team that you think deserves the belt, the shiny gold sitting right here, fire it in the comments now. I wanted to Mahomes was ridiculous. The highlight spinning touchdown play to Clyde Edwards-Helaire was truly breathtaking to behold. I said it was like we're watching Michael Jordan out there, and you can at me if you think I'm wrong, but you can at me if you disagree and you're wrong. When I was thinking about which tag team, you mentioned the tension there, so you start to think of when Stone Cold and the Undertaker were forcibly
we had the Rock and Sock connection last week, kind of like that thing.
They were paired together. I was actually thinking of another one, and there was a little tension here at times. So this was definitely a more fun tag team, and there's a third element that'll play into this. But what do you think about Too Cool Scotty Too Hottie and the late great Grandmaster Sexy Brian Christopher. What do you think about them? Because one, they were about as over as any tag team ever could be at one point. We had Scotty Too Hottie pulling out the worm. Mm-hmm. So that's one element of it. But also there was the third feature there, the big guy, and I'm not doing any sort of body commentary here, definitely not looking to get into there, but you did have Rikishi staring over, and that could be Andy Reid staring over, providing extra emphasis and oomph there. So this could be, Scotty Too Hottie, Grandmaster Sexy, Rikishi in the Andy Reid role as the tag team champions. Too cool from back in the 90s. That's where I landed on that one, but I understand if that's not as... Considering we're talking about Patrick Mahomes here, if that's not as gloriously decorated a champion as we need to be talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I would say perhaps a more decorated. I see where you're going with the fun and being over, and anytime Mahomes has his moment, it's instantly everywhere on social media and memeable. I don't see Rikishi as the puppet master that is Andy Reid and the offensive architect that he is. But I can't dispute the aesthetic. I mean, Rikishi, I think, would work brilliantly if he had a headset on and a Waffle House menu in front of him, like it seems like Andy Reid is holding his play sheet. So yeah, we can go with that analogy for this week. I like how you said, in our pre-show, our show before the show, as we call it, when you and I discussed the show and end up doing half of it as we're just planning. You said, "Oh, I got a good tag team for you." Maybe we could have dug a little more, but we'll take Too Cool. All
right. Well, on that note, we have hit the 56-minute mark.
I had to poke the bear because I know you're gonna be riding high going into this next segment.
Let's close up with Monday Night Football propaganda. Phil, would you like to read the scoreboard as we go into week 4 and we go into the Rams and the Niners in a divisional duel?
Yes. As we look at the 4 quarters that we've been through this season, after 3 quarters, I had a 4.01 unit lead. And then Laws decided to swing for the fences. And with 60-odd seconds left in Monday Night Football, I'll be damned if Trayvon Diggs didn't get an interception, he himself. Laws pivoting from Daniel Jones to throw an interception, which I think was like $1.80, to Trayvon Diggs to get one, which is $5.10, $5.20, I think it was. So now, because Tony Pollard didn't have 18.5 receiving yards somehow, and Trayvon Diggs gets an interception, the pendulum has swung almost as high as it was. Not as high as it was through 3 games. But in one fell swoop, you are now up 2.97 units. And I'm not changing my strategy. My strategy remains trusted, tried, and true. But because you won the last hole, you lead off.
Okay, I'm going to be quick here because we've got we're rounding the hour mark here, and the studio is getting hot. So let's go right off the top here. Jeff Wilson, over 1.5 receptions here. He's had a couple, throughout a couple of weeks that he's been the guy since Eli Mitchell went down early this season. And against a Rams defense with a scheme, wants to keep everything in front of you. I think he's going to be a check down makes sense option. It's a low number. It's $1.62. You can shop around for something better, but that's about the mark you're going to get. I like that one off the bat. Wilson to get over 1.5 catches and get this thing rolling and extend my lead.
Conservatism with Laws having a lead. I'm going to go with Deebo Samuel, over 57.5 receiving yards at $1.91. In each of his last 5 games against the Rams, he's gone over this total. Now, this year, his first week, 14 yards, then 44. Up, Jimmy Garoppolo's in. He gets 73 against Denver. I think being the more reliable option, and the Rams knowing how last year on this field, the Niners ran all over them, I expect opportunity to present itself for Jimmy G to throw a little more. I expect one big completion to take a big chunk out of this number, and Deebo to land in the 60s or 70s. There are alternate receiving markets out there. I saw him closer to $2 even to go above 60 or 65 yards. You can get aggressive. $1.91 is the number for me, over 57.5 receiving yards.
Okay, well, we started on the 49ers side of the ball. Let's switch when the Rams have the ball. I've got Matthew Stafford to throw an interception. Could be 1, could be 2, could be 7. That's at $1.77 is the best price I've found. Last season, threw 5 interceptions against the San Francisco 49ers in their 3 meetings. He's thrown 5 interceptions this season already. And last season, it very well, and Niners fans know this, it very well should have been 6 with the Jaworski Tart absolutely turfing a sitter in that game. So I think he's got form against this team, against this scheme. I think the 49ers with the defensive front and how well that secondary is playing better and is certainly ascending. We know the star talent they have up front, but we're seeing a more complete, perhaps, 49ers defense. The pressure is going to be able to get up front, and the schematic confidence I think that team has both on the field and on the sidelines with those wearing the headsets there. I think Stafford could be in for a maybe not an error-strewn performance, but one where he does cough it up. So, yeah, give me that at $1.77. I'm going back to the interception and you'll have something cheeky to say about it, no doubt.
No, none whatsoever, Laws. It's a good number. It's a good market. I think I like where your head's at. 5 picks in 3 games last year against the 49ers. I'll be quick because I know we just crossed the hour mark. We have to get out of the way. Robbie Gould, over 6.5 points. Can be a field goal and 4 extra points, can be a couple field goals and a single extra point. I think that's what it's going to be more like. The Rams defense in the last 2 weeks allowed 2 touchdowns on 6 red zone possessions. Yes, that was to Atlanta and Arizona, but I do see this 49ers offense stalling out, especially as things get more compact. Gould in his last 7 games against the Rams has gone over 6.5 points 5 times. You're giving me that at $1.93. Them's good odds. Just give me 2 field goals, Robbie, and we're in good shape.
I love it. Good as gold, Phil. Look, a lovable character in the band, a lovable kicker that I think most of us out there that do partake in the fantasy world, we've all had a share of Robbie Gould on our roster, delivering for us in a Monday Night Football big spot over the years. All right, Phil, we've hit, as you said, we've sailed past the hour mark. Let's get out of here. Let's land this ship. I'll leave it to you. We got football coming up in an hour and a half and change, a little over an hour and a half. You catch it on ESPN, but let's get on out of here for week 4 as this thing. This season is warming up in a wild, very even, very balanced. Kind of. How many teams are good? We're not too sure how many teams are good, but there's a lot of tight contests. Let's get out of here.
Margins are small. It'll be a great game today on ESPN. The reigning champion Rams going up against a team more so than any other has had their number in the regular season. We know what happened in last year's NFC Championship game. A lot of intrigue here and certainly playoff positions at stake. It'll be one that we look at season's end that certainly shifted the fortunes of both of these teams. So tune in on ESPN in Australia, New Zealand, shortly after 11 a.m. with the clock change last week. We don't change our clocks till November here. So that 15-hour time difference is going to stretch your maths for the next 3.5 weeks. I guess I apologize on our behalf. But anyway, thank you for hanging out with us on the Brekkie NFL Show Week 4. He is Laurie Horesh. I'm Phil Murphy. Keep it on ESPN, Oz, and Zed for all your needs for the NFL and across the world of sport, whatever your code. Until next time, Laurie and I will see you next week. Take care.